off possible. Thanks for gathering for amazing artist talks today. We have a lot of artists here today, so we're going to do our best to give you, in a very succinct way, all the important parts of the show and the work. We're Gravers Lane Gallery. We're really happy to have you. Our longtime friends and anyone new who has just walked through the door, welcome. We're a really interesting community of interesting people, so I hope you also get to talk to each other tonight. We are dedicated to contemporary craft, and we're really passionate to bring that to our audience. We're really excited to introduce our community to new artists, and we also are interested to expand our collective understanding of what craft is and what it could be. And there's so many forms that takes. If you're interested in joining us for more events like this, we have a newsletter. You can sign up. Our next show opening soon is going to be Fiberworks, Wallworks, and Basketry by Deborah Mull and Barbara Lee Smith. Sorry?
When does that open?
When does that open? I don't have that date. The 18th of October. Is opening. We have First Fridays every first Friday of the month. So if you hit those, you'll see all the new shows. So this month we have two exhibitions. One is Material Memory, Twisted Lines and Rooted Forms in that room and also in this main space. And our second show is Calliope. It's an art jewelry show. So I hope after the talk you'll have time to really take in the work after you've heard more about it. I will be speaking a little bit about material memory. I'll give the floor to the artists, and then Bruce Hoffman will introduce Calliope, and we'll give the floor to the artists. Memory made tangible. These two artists share threads. I'd like to point some ways in which the work interacts together. The exhibition by Lisa Belsky and Barbara Straussberg here explores themes of memory, transformation, and female lineage. When we started talking and collaborating, we were thinking of all the ways that the work kind of connected, and we were kind of shocked to discover that both of the artists' mothers had actually passed away during COVID. And it sort of was this unexpected connection that we found that doesn't define their work or their process, but is definitely a part of it. And it kind of is a strong undercurrent of connecting the two practices. And hence the title, Material Memory, it became even more fitting on kind of many different levels. At the heart of the exhibition is a reverence for natural materials, fiber, clay, paper, and for traditional techniques that carry meaning across time. Both artists approach their mediums experimentally, layering memory and material to explore what endures, what is lost, and what remains. Barbara Straussberg is an abstract painter, printmaker, paper artist, and she draws her training from the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts and her degree in art history at the University of Pennsylvania. In this exhibition, she combines handmade paper, printmaking, and archival family images, using, amongst others, the Korean technique of jumchi to create layered forms that both reveal and conceal memory. Lisa Belsky, over here, a multimedia artist and educator with degrees from Tyler and Ohio State University, begins with hand-knitted and crocheted textiles inherited through generations of women in her family. They're dipped in porcelain slip and fired, and these fabrics are transformed into delicate ceramic relics, embracing cracks and collapse as part of their strength. Together, Straussberg and Belsky create a dialogue between preservation and release, grief and growth, tradition and experimentation. And this exhibition honors making itself as a way to hold memory in form. So I will let these artists speak, and it just occurred to me that I forgot to introduce myself and all the important people here in this room. So before they come, I'm Chloe Lepichot, I'm director of the gallery, but I have many important colleagues here, and most importantly, Ken Goldenberg, who, without whom all of this would not be possible. So thank you, Ken. And over here we have Bruce and Kate and Mia and Ryan, and am I forgetting anyone else? David, where's David? David. So thank you so much. I'll leave the floor to the artists.
Thanks for that, Chloe.
Sure.
Great.
Thanks, Hobie. find my spot here. So I'm going to read, just so I don't forget what I want to say here. So thank you, Chloe, for that beautiful introduction. And to everyone at the Gravers Lane Gallery for your enthusiasm, patience, and hard work that went into curating this exhibition. I'm Barbara Straussberg, by the way, so I'm the first of the artists to speak. And it means so much to me that you are all here tonight. When Chloe conceived of the idea to pair us together, I read Lisa's artist statement and was amazed at the parallels in our work. Hopefully this is not redundant, but we both relish our materials and how they can be transformed and manipulated with both intention and chance to create something new. And we draw from our family histories, both, as Chloe pointed out, affected and moved by the loss of our mothers during the pandemic in 2020. One question that has surfaced as it relates to this body of work is how and why do I work across mediums? How do I think as an artist, and why does material and process matter? First and foremost, I see myself as an abstract painter. I take a painterly approach to mixed media, loose and gestural. I start with a drawn line or mark based on how I experience nature, building the surface with veils of color and peeling away layers to reveal hidden passages and images underneath. I work in an intuitive and experimental manner, which I believe allows an open-minded approach to making art. I value an artist's understanding of craft and material. And an art practice that is grounded in technique and self-discipline. At the same time, I feel an artist should be willing to take chances and feel free to play with their materials. I truly believe that a playful spirit can make you a better artist. This playfulness in art started with me as a child. I loved to weave, crochet, paint, draw, and do collage. I realize now that I have always naturally moved between art mediums. It is not surprising that as I work, something unexpected pops up in my work or harkens back to that playful time. I can think of one example of this open-mindedness during a recent printmaking residency I did. I found in my studio a small circular textured plate, which is called a collograph, which I made years ago. I began to use the circle shape in my work, which then unexpectedly morphed into making a variety of new printmaking plates. So essentially, I did not set out to introduce the circle into my work, but it happened organically. I began to think about the symbolism of the circle and how it relates to the cycle of life, continuity, nature, loss, and circling back to my childhood. So a chance discovery from the past moves my work in a new direction and connects me to the present day. This is true when I sorted through an archive of family photographs I inherited from my parents, which became an important part of my Jung-Chi paperwork and prints. An example of the Jung-Chi is that larger piece on the wall there, on the far wall. And that technique, just to very briefly tell you what it is an ancient Korean paper manipulation technique. I don't make the paper, but I layer it while it's wet, roll it, and this forms one sheet of paper, and then I actually shape it into a sculpture, which I've mounted on the wall. This forms another line of continuity between my past and my present. Overall, I see this new body of work as an extension of what I've done before and where I'm going. It captures one moment in time. Lately, I've been thinking about trying to be positive about the future. I see this work reflecting optimism and light. Perhaps it's my small way of contributing a spark of happiness and joy during these challenging times. My childhood friend always says to me, "Barb, make more art. The world needs it." Thank you. Thank you.
Did a little bit.
I edited it.
Alright, we'll go up here. So, hi. Hi everyone. My name is Lisa Belsky. I'm number 2 of the artists in the show here. I actually wrote myself a few talking points this time. So for me, this collection of work was very much about pushing limits. When we had decided to do the show, Chloe had asked if there was any interest in kind of pushing the scale, and that had been something on my mind for quite a while. And with my process, there's predictability up until the point of the firing. Once that piece hits the kiln, there's a lot of unknown. All of the fabric is burning away, and the structure, which was the fabric, is gone, but then the clay needs time to be in the heat before it can solidify. So in that window, there's a lot of movement that can occur. There's slumping that can happen. There's a lot of stress that can take place if things aren't supported properly. I can get cracks. Some cracks are fine. They're not gonna impact it structurally. Other cracks make it no longer viable. So pushing scale has always been something I've wanted to do, but it's come with so much trial and error that it's taken quite a bit of time to get to, be able to break a certain size. And I'm very excited to share a piece with you in this show that's actually the largest piece I've ever successfully made. So it's on the table there. I think you'll be able to figure out which one it is.
One there.
So it's something that feels pretty great, and it's exciting to see what's possible. And it's taken a lot of learning from the things that have happened before to figure out what I need to do in order to troubleshoot. But even when I have that knowledge, there's still always that variable of the firing that I can only do so much and something else may happen. So that was the first point for what I was exploring with this show. The second was exploring the openness. So there's different stitches that I'll use, and I've developed a language for using certain stitches with certain scales because I know certain sizes, because I know, and also certain forms, because I know that they're going to work well together. I've had success in previous firings from them, but I wanted to see what would happen if I started to really push the openness of the weave using either larger needles or crochet hooks, or using a more lace type of a knitting stitch or crocheting stitch. So there's several examples of those pieces in the show. And they're exciting because they are extremely fragile, but they're also pretty strong at the same time. So they're thin, but they are, because of the form, a lot of them with them being more rounded, they end up being a stronger structure. And you'll be able to see some movement on some of the more delicate pieces that is different than the movement that occurs on the larger pieces. On some of the larger basket type of forms, you'll see things start to slump and sag in a way that the lace doesn't, because you also have the weight of the piece that comes into play during the firing, which doesn't happen so much with the smaller ones. An interesting thing about the process with the smaller lace pieces, they didn't really require much support in the firing, where the larger ones, it's they're supported on the interior as well as the outside to make sure nothing moves in a way that I don't want it to. And even then it still does sometimes. And then the third thing that I was working through was variation. So I like to play around with either variation in form. So for example, in the window, there's a collection of bottles. So it's the same stitch, but I wanted to see how they all related when I did the same thing, but played with scale. So we have them displayed in a way that really just emphasizes that, that shift of scale in the window there. There's other examples of that with the large piece that I was talking about earlier, and then iterations of that form, but playing with the scale. So we have the largest one, and then right beside it on the table is the same stitch combination, the same type of form, but it's the little baby version of that. So, it's with this body of work, there's a lot of ways for me to move in a brand new direction with just changing one or two variables. So there's a lot of that happening here in the show. So yeah, I feel like that's a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes. Yeah.
When you fire the ones with fiber in them,
yeah,
does the smoke come out, and does it leave some kind of an interesting residue or a hue to it, or is it just always
So-
white on what the clay is?
That's a great question. So when I'm making the fiber, I use cotton that is just natural cotton. And I tested a lot of different materials because of what can happen during the burnout. So I don't use anything that's acrylic because that's gonna have fuming and yeah. And so during the type of firing that I do is a very low and long firing. So while it's burning out, it's more of just a smolder early on. So there's never any like actual like ignition. Yeah, that I know of. I haven't looked, but this is my theory.
You haven't been in there.
Yeah, I know.
But
But
in the oven with it.
but when you look inside the kiln, there's no char marks, there's no evidence of carbon. Everything is clean and the pieces come out with no markings or evidence of any kind of burnout. So
When you cut an unsuccessful piece, does it end up being hollow, or is there remnants of ash in it? Like what's...
so I smash them, not cut them.
You should slice one once, 'cause I want to know.
But the piece that I get, I think of it more like bone marrow. So it's not hollow,
Right.
but it's not completely solid.
Right.
And the more fabric there is, the more density I'll have with the clay.
Right.
So the thicker pieces, so on the large one of the reasons that I was losing so many of the bigger pieces is that during the firing, and I'm using porcelain, which has a high shrinkage rate. So there's a lot of movement that needs to happen that I have to account for in the firing. And I'm losing those pieces because I would get these giant cracks on the interior base of the piece. So on that one that's in there, I actually made a whole second slab of fabric, I guess call it a slab. I knit a whole extra piece and then I dunked that and then I stuck it to the bottom. So I doubled up, yep. So it has twice as much thickness, which makes it twice as strong to be able to withstand the movement. So if I were to take a cross section of the lace pieces, they would probably be a little bit more porous on the interior than the bigger ones.
So which came first for you? Were you a knitter first or a ceramic?
Definitely a knitter, yeah, and that's where my mom comes in. So she taught me to knit when I was 6, and she learned how to knit from her great aunt. There were knitters on both sides of my family, knitters and crocheters.
We'll talk.
Yeah. So she would, one of my early memories is just watching her crochet like that classic chevron Afghan. Everyone in the family has one, and she would just motor along, and it's like it was just this thing she knew how to do. She didn't think about it. It was just she'd be on the phone crocheting, and so I learned how to knit and crochet. When I was young, I couldn't really wrap my head around crocheting. With knitting, it was easier because there's like you go into the top stitch that's on the needle. With crochet, it was too open-ended. Now I prefer crochet for this work because there's a little more freedom there. It's harder to fix mistakes with knitting. With crochet, I can just rip it out. But yeah, so when I was young, I would crochet nothing too elaborate, mostly just squares that I would then stitch into other things. And then, over time, when I got interested in ceramics, there was kind of just this, when you're in art school, especially with the program at Tyler, in your sophomore year, at least when I was there, it was a lot of exploration. So I had a fibers class that was like a sculptural fibers class, and I had ceramics. And it was kind of just one of those I was working on a soft crocheted sculpture, and I was also doing this thing with slip over here, and it was just, let's see. It was curiosity, that question of what would happen if. And so I dipped it, and the success, there was enough success in those early pieces that it made me want to keep going. But they were very different than the work that I have now. Those early pieces were very much about just kind of the fact that this technique can work and what can I do with it. And then over the years, it's become more refined, and I've worked on developing a porcelain recipe that really helps to capture the stitch definition. But early on, you could tell it was netting of some kind, but you couldn't quite make out the exact stitch. And if you're a knitter or a crocheter, you'll be able to identify the stitches over there when you look. But the early work, it wasn't quite that way, where they were more organic. So it's been more important for me over time to kind of incorporate that visibility in the work.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the questions.
Can I ask you one more?
Sure.
Were
Yeah.
you ever influenced by Adelaide Alsop Robinot?
I'm not directly in my work, but
Syracuse?
admire the work for sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but not a
Because
direct influence.
I'm seeing
The openness.
relations
Yeah, for sure.
between
Yeah, that's a
her
great
work
question.
and,
I'm not seeing anything nasty.
So,
Maddie.
yeah, but thank you, and thank you to Gravers Lane Gallery.
So I get to introduce these two. It's very Tyler-centric tonight. Scott and Lisa Cylinder were medals majors at Tyler School of Art, and we were classmates. Lisa and I were direct classmates. Scott came in the picture a little later. I've known them for 40 years now, and I've watched them grow and watched their children grow, and have been really, I cannot tell you how wonderful their new work is. It's a joy to see what they've produced in the last couple of years. They, like all artists, struggle to have a family and maintain a career and maintain a body of work that can sell, that is going to support you. And so they early on created a production line that was really wonderful, whimsical, and carried them through. But deep down inside, they're consummate craftspeople, and they moved up to Maine recently and just put their nose to the grindstone. And a couple years ago, I was able to sell them an incredible necklace for them, and I think that was kind of a pivotal piece in their career that showed them that they are true artists, and they're experimentalists, and they are masters of materials, and they've recently taught themselves enameling. So when you come up and look at the work, it's pretty remarkable that they've figured out these processes by being two artists that are a couple that have an incredible symbiotic relationship and push-pull, and it's not an easy thing to collaborate as artists. It's artists have egos and
Or as spouses.
or spouses or siblings or anything like that. So, but they've created this process that is remarkable to watch. And if you go on, you Google them, they have a great video of them making actually this necklace I sold, and it shows you some of the process and thoughts. And a piece doesn't just happen with them. It could take years and years and years where they have materials, and the materials sit and they just ponder it, and one day they pick it up and they start. And then one grabs one thing, one grabs the other, and you have something like this that develops. So I'm not going to go into anything else, but just because they're such good friends, and it just makes me happy to have them here. So Scott and Lisa Cylinder, and their daughter's here right now.
Thank you. All right. Move on, Chief. You were good. Thank you. Hello. First of all, we'd like to thank Gravers Lane, Bruce, of course. He was very inspirational in inviting us to do the show, and didn't give us any kind of confinement. He just said, hit it out of the park. And so when you hear something like that, it's like, okay, mister, here you go. So we've been working on this body work for almost 3 years, and interspersed with all the other responsibilities we have in order to keep our life kind of moving along and paying for things. We have many things to do, but I'll start with saying that we met at Tyler in 1984, and we've been together for all of that time.
40 years.
Plus 40 plus years, and so we are partners. We are parents. We are artists. We're collaborators. We check our egos at the door every day, for the most part, and we really do try to work together, inspiring each other to step to the next level. We lived in Pennsylvania for 30 years raising our children, and recently we've moved to Maine, where we are enjoying a wonderful life, living amongst artists and in a beautiful environment, which is so inspiring. It's very difficult to stay in the studio. So this body of work, we've been working with musical instrument pieces for many, many years, but this body of work is new to us.
In that it's, we started with clarinets, Did that exclusively for 3 or 4 years. This is the original bell from the first clarinet that inspired us to start working with the instruments. But we came to this after working with many different instruments, whatever we found that triggered us, and came across a cache of tubes. And we always thought that was never something that we could do. Too hard to manipulate, too hard to bend. We found out in the first couple pieces that we started experimenting with that they were not silver soldered together, they were soft soldered together. So in order to work with French horns and trumpets and trombones, I had to reteach myself how to soft solder, which was fine. I had done it before, but it was a whole other challenge of building pieces, not using our normal techniques of being able to silver solder things.
And I think the one thing that we have to say here is every single time we do one of these shows, we are exploring something completely new because we are curious, we are hungry, we are interested in materials, we're interested in how to put them together, we're interested in design and pattern, and all of these things are constantly playing in our mind. And while we played with the clarinets and the flutes and saxophones for many years, they were easy to solder together and tap and die together and, you know, sort of figure out how to make things. But like Scott said, this was completely new because when that first piece fell apart and we had all these plans, it was like, oh no, what are we going to do? And we sat down and we figured it out. And I think any artist who's going through something and has been making for a long while, you need to always find something new to inspire you to be a creative person and solve problems.
So we started to make these pieces a couple of years ago. Actually, the pieces, we bought the first batch of tubes on eBay in 2020. And they sat on our table sprawled out because we had nothing else to do. We were stuck in our studio for 2 years without having students or shows or anything else. So we dug in and we lived with these pieces for years, playing around with them, manipulating them, moving them, just seeing what we could come up with from an idea standpoint. And then 2 years ago, we started to actually make things. And that was the experimental part where we were just trying to figure out how to put things together. And we did the first batch of the pieces that are in the show, finished them last year, and then put it aside because we had other obligations. We had to make work for shows and we had to, you know, just live. And so one batch of work was made early, and I'd say about a third of it, and then 2/3 of it were made in the spring and the summer of this year.
And we were really working. Our
Yeah.
heads were down.
And so the concept of Calliope is that Calliope is the muse of poetry and music. It is also the name of the circus and carousel instrument that is played. And most of our conceptual stuff comes from relating the musical instrument pieces that we use to a concept that relates to music. And so Calliope kind of, when we came up with the concept, it was after the first group of pieces were made, it opened up idea doors for us to go through and start working with specifically mythological themes, circus themes, carousels. And the more that we did stuff like that, it triggered kind of this, what we have is nostalgia for things from our childhood, things from art, things from film, things from all the things that we absorb along the way. And it's two people, so we both absorb different things and then we kind of mash it up and compare notes and come up with one idea.
And I think all these pieces are mashups. They're both of our personalities put into one. So that is why a lot of them are incredibly well thought out, is because we both come to it from different sides and then we have to negotiate and make it work. And our kids can testify to this, that it's usually a happy thing, but if somebody's got an idea that they're sticking with, it could be a little grisly. But it works itself out in the end. And I think what the most important thing is we're getting to an age now where we are getting very nostalgic. The idea of both of us going to the circus as children and enjoying that wonder and having the fear of watching somebody swing above you on a tightrope or on a trapeze, and seeing an animal perform and just being the awe and the wonder of it. I mean, I certainly have awe and wonder in my life now, but not to that extent, because I think when you're young, your eyes are just so not used to seeing these things, and you take it in and it's just like, wow. And we want to create that kind of wow and take you back to seeing something like that made you feel wonderful about, someone's performance.
And a huge inspiration for us was visiting the Ringling Brothers Circus Museum in Sarasota, which just possibly the best. I've been to the Louvre twice. I've been to the Met dozens of times.
We've been to the Rijksmuseum, which also is probably right up there at the top, but this museum.
The Ringling Museum for both of us was just like tear-inducing.
Yes.
And it stuck with, and this is a long time ago, this is probably 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was etched into our brains. And so the things that we saw there triggered a lot of ideas, but the thing that we based this on was in the Ringling Museum, there's a plaque that says the modern circus was born at the fall of the Roman Empire. As circuses
beginning of their
dispersed
timeline.
out of Rome, when Rome fell, all the circuses that were in Rome started traveling. And so that concept, combined with what we were already working on and the idea of a falling empire, also fed into the idea of what's going on today here. And so we're looking at, the parallel between the fall of the Roman Empire and the fall of America, an empire that also is crumbling. So there are dark undertones to some of these pieces. They are smiley and happy, but if you look at some of the themes, Cerberus is threatening. The Minotaur is threatening. There are kind of like these just subtle undercurrents that are worked into the references of the pieces, and although they are about relative to carousel animals or relative to circus themes, there's also that kind of undercurrent of the history of what the circus was and what the circus is, and also the death of the circus. When Ringling Brothers shut down, that was tragic to us, and we also relate that to a parallel, like jazz music, to American crafts, where it's like you had this pinnacle in the 20th century of these movements of great art that now in the 21st century are looking like, where is this going? There's not a lot of it left. So we have part of that nostalgia is for what was.
And it's not all sad. What we're trying to do is...
Sorry about that.
We think about this every day because the news is all-encompassing, and we all know this. But what we're trying to do is create joy and take you back to that moment of wonder, and to be able to look at something and appreciate craftsmanship, and to appreciate someone else's performance, and appreciate things that are important in our lives. And this is what we all have to do. We have to appreciate each other and all of our individual skills. And I think what we're trying to do here is to create a sense of wonder. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being such a great audience. Please, please, please come and find these artists and ask them further questions. Talking to all of them, it ends up being so much more, the artwork comes to life so much more. So don't be shy and stay a while, have a drink.
Can I add one thing? I want to thank Ruth and Rick. Ruth was the first person to encourage us to make one-of-a-kind work when we were just starting out, and they gave us an opportunity, and I want to say thank you.
Well, it's wonderful to see you.
And I am so happy to
Enjoy.
have a front row seat.
I want to free you.
Fuzzy bug.
Yeah.